Hello, I'm Michelle Leduc Catlin. Welcome to episode 7 of season 2 of Trued Up, the podcast that invites you to be the change. Today's episode of Trued Up exemplifies the reason I started this show. This conversation both addresses the existential threats we're facing, but it doesn't just explain or provide answers. It demonstrates a transformational way forward, an inspiring, thought-provoking, heartwarming trialogue that allows for new ways of thinking and new ways of being to emerge. And the success of it is due entirely to my guests, Tom Shaw and Lluvius Trozzi from Over to the Youth, an organization dedicated to preparing tomorrow's leaders today. While there are many established institutions training young people, just as there are many smart people addressing problems in the world today, most exist inside the problem reaction solution paradigm. This way of relating to the world has value in the short term, but history inevitably continues to repeat itself. Plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. Tom and Lluvius are paving a new way of thinking and being in the world, a way to extricate ourselves from the shackles of a system we did not create and does not serve us. I invite you to listen, enjoy, and share. I'm so excited about having a conversation with you guys today. So I wanted to start, I was just saying this before we started recording, that my little homage, I don't have an Over to the Youth t-shirt. So I have my Free Humanity t-shirt. So I figure it was the closest, the UK connection, you know.
Anyway. I hear you. I mean, this one that I've got was just a test print to see how it would look.
Okay.
Come out wonderfully. So yeah, we've got some ideas on making things like that available because they are super cool. I like it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, they're at least a conversation starter. So hey, yeah. And I use it as a conversation starter. How about that?
There we go.
So I'd like you guys to introduce yourselves, mostly so that we start talking about what matters to you and that you get to present yourself for how you want to be known and introduced. So Tom, since you're next in line, according to my camera view, why don't you start?
I mean, that's a big question where to start. There's so many points. Every time I do one of these interviews, I always think there's so many points that I could start at. So let me think. In terms of Over to the Youth, my role at the moment is managing the operations and arranging the offerings that we have to our youth members. And I've also been stepping in to represent and network on behalf of Over to the Youth at a lot of events that have happened over the past few months, and I guess before that as well. And having those conversations has been absolutely wonderful with people of all sorts and from all walks of life who all realize that by definition, this is what we're facing in the world it's a generational game. We need to be able to have trust in our youth that they've got the skills and the tools they need to thrive, so that the responsibility of creating a harmonious world and a world we all want to live in gets passed on to them, and they in turn can pass it on to the generation that comes after them, and so forth. And I've been struck recently that that's on a lot of people's minds. And to me, that signifies the importance of the work that we do with Over to the Youth in giving young people those skills and the tools they need to thrive. And it's an absolute pleasure to be a part of that. And yeah, so that's where my focus has been at the moment. And I've always got ideas and thinking, how could I do more, and what could I tweak and all of this. And I love having conversations about it. And thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation here today to continue that.
Well, thank you. And there's so much in what you just said that I want to address. the idea of involving the youth, multi-generational connections. Let's go back just a little bit. And Lluvius, maybe you can fill in, because I believe you are founder or co-founder of Over to the Youth.
On paper, I'm the founder, but Tom's really been here from the beginning, so we might as well be co-founders.
Okay.
But
so tell us
yeah,
a bit about that. What was the impetus of it? What exactly is it?
I was sitting in a very beautiful place when the vision came, and it didn't all come at once, but there was this definite sense that there's a huge underrepresentation of the youth. And there's also two battles going on right now. There's the more obvious one over, consciousness today. There's all sorts of troubles in the world, whether it's traditional war, unnecessary deaths, or fifth generational warfare being waged on all of us. There's also a battle for tomorrow, and that's being waged in the minds of our youth through mass media, propaganda, the educational system. There's a contest for the next generation, and the urgency with Over to the Youth, at least what it means to me, is we're currently losing that battle. And maybe the war analogy is not right for this. I think it's more of a building thing. But the standard of the future will be determined by the quality of our youth today, because we are the future leaders, and the future will be led in whichever direction is taken up by this next generation.
So can you say more about what those two directions are as you see it? Because certainly I love what you said, and you said it very poetically, which I will not be able to recreate at this moment. But the future always has belonged to the youth. And there are two things. One is there seems to be little engagement by the youth, which I think is why your organization is so important. And two, just say more about what these two pulls are.
Mm. Well, there's an elevation in consciousness. There's freedom consciousness. There's expanding perspective, and there's the manifestation of that increase in perspective in the world. And then there's also slave consciousness, where people are suppressed by self-limiting belief systems, and then that takes root, and there's tyrants that can exploit that, because a world of followers will be led by whoever will take the reins. Does that answer the question?
It does. And my question is, how did you gain so much wisdom at such a young age? Which sounds a little bit patronizing, and I really don't mean it that way. It's just that I'm struck by how few people twice your age know what you're talking about. So I'm curious how you found that, and then Tom, I'd like to hear your answer as well.
It's not mine. I came to believe that there's a God when I was 18 years old, and I prayed for wisdom, and I believe that any insight that's come to me has been God's will.
Tom, how about you? How did you come to recognize these two dynamics in the world?
So mine came about from a journey through an intense period of darkness, really. I remember at 18, I went off to dental school to study dentistry. And I could use the term, I was living a normal life. I thought, well, this is it. This is what's ahead for me. I'm going to go through this system. I'm going to get the degree. I'm going to go off and be a dentist in the system and go through all the rigmarole there. And then COVID came along, and with the nature of lockdowns and the very authoritarian policies that were put in place that completely turned the world I was in on my head. I lost the community that I was beginning to build with just an innate sense within me that something was deeply wrong with what was happening. That isolated me from a lot of people around me who weren't on the same journey. And that was very difficult for me to come to terms with. Over the resulting few years, I became depressed, suicidal. I lost all faith in the system around me and the people that were engaged with those systems to understand the struggles that I was going through and what I was seeing in the world. And that it was at the nexus of that, really, that Over to the Youth came along. And I found out about it. Lluvius presented the idea of Over to the Youth at the very first Better Way conference that was happening in Bath. And I was listening in online because I was still in dental school at that point. And as much as I would love to have been in person, it was not possible to get that time off. And the ray of hope just struck through me immediately. And I knew that I had to be involved in this. And how Lluvius had come to terms with this is the problem we're being faced. This is multi-generational. Youth have not been served by educational systems and from family structures that have been degraded, and through increasing decision making and sovereignty that's been handed over to government and unaccountable bodies, that all of this has prevented you from being able to flourish. And that's what I realized when my whole world was turned upside down. I didn't have the tools and the skills to navigate that. And so it was through my own personal experience that I came to see the importance of the work that's being done here. And that is why I'm here today, to serve, first and foremost, to serve that previous version of me who didn't have what he needed in those darkest moments, and knowing that there's so many other youth who are on similar journeys and are in those nexuses to varying degrees. So that's how I came to the wisdom, through a first-hand experience.
I really, what I love about your story and stories is the spiritual nature of everything that's happened, particularly over the last 4 years, that has awakened consciousness, that has had people face what's actually happening in the world, but then has also created a gift of purpose, a gift of community. Tell me about what it is that Over to the Youth does and how it is you're expanding that for others.
So we provide our core service is we're providing an online space for youth around the world to come, and we call it a check-in. And what the check-in presents the opportunity for is to speak from a very authentic place and to be held by a circle of peers. And we also incorporate world-class mentor into that space. So we do a lot of focus on our language. There's a lot of subconscious use of language, which is really a symptom of self-limiting belief systems that the world's imprinted on us. I was a chronic apologizer, so I would do nothing wrong, but I'd apologize every third sentence. Also,
so you are Canadian, right? So
I am, but that's also a stigma that I think has been very detrimental for our country. This ethos of niceness. It's what has allowed our nation to be specifically overrun by tyrants. Is that to be nice is to be complacent with what's wrong, as opposed to being kind, being strong, standing up for what's right. There's a lot of that now in Canada because, I believe in rhythm. There's a pendulum swing going on. But we do a lot of focus on our language. We run workshops. We do open gatherings too, once a month now, where we bring in the broader community so that there's a shared space where it's youth and it's those that have taken more steps along their path. And we're going to be a registered federal charity in January, and be looking at in-person events in primarily, firstly in the UK, and then in other places too.
I want to hear more about this mentoring. I think mentoring, it used to be so much a part of culture. People, before there was an education system, people were mentored into their craft, into their work. And it's so missing. I've felt it missing almost my whole life. How is it that people people, I think you're pointing to this, but can people of any age get involved in that? And how does that work?
Well, the story of Mentor originated back in the Odyssey. I don't know if you're familiar with the son of King Odysseus. It was, if I'm pronouncing this right, Telemachus. Tom, am I pronouncing that right? It's Greek.
Telemachus.
So.
Telemachus. Yeah.
Telemachus. So King Odysseus went to war. It was during the Trojan War. Obviously, maybe this is history, maybe this is legend. But he was gone for a very long time, and actually his return home took even longer than his voyage, his crusade out to war. And that's a whole story. Odysseus's story is very interesting. But he had I believe either an unborn son or a baby boy when he left. And he'd left his queen to govern his kingdom, and his very little boy behind. And he asked Mentor, like, please watch over my son, guide him in my absence. And Mentor was there like, well, I'm not qualified for this job. Like, well, you are. You love my son. Therefore, you are the most qualified to do this job. So it's not always that the qualified are summoned to a responsibility, a role, to leadership, to mentorship, but the called are always qualified.
So how does this work within your organization, Tom? How does someone get involved with a mentoring program?
So with the weekly check-ins that we've got at the moment, we have mentors in those spaces who, as the youth who come to those sessions, bring in the challenges and the things that are active on their mind. Those mentors can begin to work with those ideas to say, okay, what is the narrative that you're presenting here? What is it we can notice as we go on that journey that you've been on? And what are some of the things that, with my experience, I can simply highlight to say is there that maybe you might not have seen otherwise? That's an opening there to begin a process of self-inquiry and self-discovery that is facilitated by the mentor. We also have sessions and workshops that our mentors run separately from time to time on specific skills and ideas that helps broaden out that toolbox in for our youth to unpack in their own time what it is they're going on, and to be able to experiment with changing the narratives that they tell themselves, however it may be. And there may well be opportunities for some of our youth to work one-to-one with mentors on specific issues as and when those arise. That's a more informal process that tends to arise organically, whether the need for that is there or not. The mentor piece, I think, is really, really huge. I spent some time over the weekend at a debating festival here in the UK, and one of the things that was discussed there is what's happened in terms of higher education. And there seemed to be a unanimous agreement, both from the panel and from the audience, that the erosion of true apprenticing and mentoring in that regard for specific skills has been a huge detriment to many youth these days. I find it telling that that idea of mentoring is entering people's consciousness more and more. And that's why I'm so excited that that is the crux of how we envision things here at Over to the Youth. I can talk about the logo here that's on the shirt. It is handing it down, handing the baton from one generation to the next in this all-encompassing generational loop.
I find this idea so exciting, inspiring. I actually can't say enough about it, because I see not only the opportunity to pass on wisdom, but the opportunity for the mentor, because we have, as a culture, dismissed the wisdom of our elders. And it's so empowering to, I was going to say them, us, to be able to contribute in that way. For me as a coach, it's the thing I love to do most. But I also see that division has created such a disconnect, and that just the act of bringing people together from different generations is in and of itself empowering. I don't know. Do you have any comments to say about that? Because I could just keep, I just see so much available in that whole process.
Well, it's all about bridge building, right? Like, we're living at a time where we're dealing with the downstream effect of division on all sides. I mean, it might have started out as division between ideologies or religions or ethnicities, but we're really divided at this point down to genders. Male and female are at war. Not in every case, obviously. We're here having a perfectly wonderful conversation, but there's a certain venomosity between a misogynistic group and for lack of a better term, a third wave feminism group, and there's a feedback loop between these two, which is festering hatred, and I think that it's misdirected hatred, and I do believe that at some higher level of play, there's orchestrators that do this deliberately to keep us distracted from things that actually matter, and to keep us divided, because alone we fall. But generationally too, due to the format of the educational system, starting at a very young age, extracting children from their homes, from their parents, the nature of income tax and inflation, which is really systemic theft, which forces, in most cases, both parents to work. So there is no mother in the household anymore. And this is being viewed as a good thing, as a progression for women's rights. I'm not opposed to equal rights in any fashion. However, I don't see it as a privilege for women to be forced to work to sustain a nuclear family because of systemic theft. And so the child is really left in the state of abandonment, and all they have is this institution. Really, I grew up in a white walled box, and I was constantly thrown in what they called isolation. And this system, while there's good teachers within it, the system itself is not structured in care for the nurturing of the unique gifts of each child. It's a one-size-fits-all system, which says, okay, if you don't meet this bar, you're good for nothing, and you're going to go work at Tesco's or McDonald's, and that's all society has for you. Well, where was the mentoring in that space? Where was the activation of the unique mission, the reason why that soul came and manifested at this time on this planet? Where did that potential go? And we have systems too, which, yes, reward very academic youth, such as Tom could have been, as myself. But then we look at, what does that reward look like? In Tom's case, Tom had a moral crisis because he realized that his career didn't align with his ethics. He would not poison more people to reach a credential, to have this salary of this system based on monetary theft.
Okay, that's a whole lot of open cans of worms there.
Yeah, which one do you want to take first?
It's like, we'll take which one. So I first just say that I can completely relate. I actually just this week resigned from the Actors Union. I had written several times during the COVID years, and particularly about actors giving medical advice, encouraging impressionable young people to get an experimental medical treatment. So I've written an open letter of resignation that I've just published today, ironically. So I completely understand.
Well done. Well done.
Well, thank you. So I appreciate, what it takes, and I appreciate the inner struggle, because it's all I ever wanted to do when I was a youth, and now I've given it up. Now, to what you were saying about division, I really want to dig into that, because I think you have just described certain divisions in the most elegant way I have heard, where you've done it without causing further division. So bravo for that, because we need to have these conversations. We need to have conversations about division being created without creating further division. I think it's really interesting, because as someone who in the past would have identified as a feminist, there's nothing that you've said that I disagree with. I'm not even sure what I want to ask, just that I want to acknowledge and underline what you've said, that we have to have conversations about these divisions without pushing buttons. How do you do that? Is that something that Over to the Youth is committed to? And yeah, how do you go about that?
Over to the Youth is committed to preparing tomorrow's leaders today. Our organization doesn't have an ideological agenda beyond that. We're focused on the water wheel of intergenerational society. Me personally, my calling in life, as I see it at this time at 23 years old, is to create, cultivate, and nurture authentic harmony. And there is always a part of me that wants to choose a side to participate in the tribalism. I mean, I've been looking at the abortion and pro-life phenomenon, and having a leniency to pro-life. There has always been a hook to want to, okay, pick a side, and all I need to do is destroy the other people, destroy their position, obliterate their stance, and then we'll have authentic harmony. No. When someone's ideology comes under attack, they'll fight to the death to defend it. And what I'm realizing is actually, well, I've got to let my guard down here. I've got to see the other side of it. I think the abortion case has been the hardest one for me to do that in, because it's one of the most volatile, and I've not yet entered the public sphere on my stance with it, but just been experimenting in my private life. And the reason why it's been the hardest is because both sides want to attack me for, well, saying, well, you're both right in an odd way. But looking at the common ground, and I'm using this as an example because it is so volatile, whether somebody identifies with the pro-choice ideology or someone identifies with the pro-life ideology, what I've come to understand from speaking to both parties is that neither party thinks of abortion as a positive symptom of society, and both believe that society would be better off if we've reduced the amount of abortions. Now, there's upstream issues that we can actually unite over. Destruction of the nuclear family, the erosion of morality in society, the stress of ever increasing living expenses, the extraction of the extraction of strong parental figures in the child's life. Like there's so much that's actually leading to like a really unprecedented rate of abortion in the last decade. We can focus on the symptom like allopathic medicine does, or we can actually look at what's causing the symptoms, what's the root of the dis-ease of society, and unite on that front. We need to overcome this urge to destroy each other first. And I say that to both pro-life and pro-choice people.
Again, so many things there. I think you're absolutely right about what I hear is that what's required is not a debate, but an inner reckoning, an inner introspection about what it is we're ultimately committed to, right? Like, there's an old saying, you can be right or you can be happy. That so many people are focused on once they gain their opinion, right? Once they've made it, which is usually at some point in their 20s, right? They come to like, okay, well, this is now what I believe. Before that, and this is why youth is so important. Before that, we tend to be open to more ideas, but then it solidifies and calcifies, and we become absolutely rigid. And then, of course, we've got this division created by media and internet that now funnels us with information that just supports our opinions, so that we're looking at the other side as if they're absolutely crazy. How could they think that? Because, of course, they're getting the information that informs and supports their opinions. So how is it that we focus, because obviously, it's important to focus on issues, but how do we turn our attention to the inner work that needs to be done so that we can have the conversations we need to have? Tom, let me ask you this question.
Yeah, I was going to jump in on that point anyways. I am finding more and more that I can hold the ideas, opinions that I have and the experiences that have come with those that have led me to come to where I am, and still hold a space for others in doing so. Those two things aren't compatible with me, and they're compatible with me, and they're compatible with me because I realize I've gone on a journey to my own ideas. Whoever it is that I'm coming to has also gone a journey to get to the ideas that they've reached and experiences that have informed that. And creating spaces where we can go beyond the ideas and the opinions to the experiences that shaped those is that's where we remind ourselves that we're all human at the end of the day. That is the unity. That is the remembrance that we are all divine souls, and that we all have a place here, and that we can be heard and respected, and we can explore things meaningfully. That is a showcase of trust as well. It is in those spaces, in those explorations, that we can relearn to trust one another, trust with a peer, trust from a mentor to a mentee, trust from a mentee to a mentor, trust from a mentor to a mentor. All of those things. That is how that becomes undone. For so long, we've had this digital existence that has purely encouraged just that surface level attacking brief ideas, devoid of a face or a persona or an actual person to have that conversation with. That's a big part of it. When there's we can see each other on this conversation now and at least get a sense that, okay, there's a real person here with real ideas, real experiences, and so forth. A lot of the communication that has happened online up until this point, and perhaps in a way it started before that with print media as well, that those ideas and those conversations have become devoid of people and the souls that originated them. So we've at least found with Over to the Youth that there are ways of using the digital technology, which young people are well versed in, to redress that balance, to begin to introduce the idea of, well, what is it to have a meaningful conversation, even if it's remotely? So all our gatherings, for example, are face-to-face, video has to be on, all of those things. And we take the time to go round everyone and have them give a contribution into the space. So everyone is aware that I'm here, standing here in the space authentically, as are all of you. Those kind of cultures is what allows us to build trust and gives taste for, I guess, young people, and in the open gatherings to older people as well, who may have forgotten that is where healing and opportunities for introspection happens, and that it moves beyond the tribalism of keyboard warrior rampages across the internet and whatever else. That's how it happens.
I don't mean to gush, but I'm so like I feel like I'm vibrating. I'm so moved by what you're saying. I'm truly moved. It strikes me, first of all, that there's so much hope in both of you, in your organization. I think we are very cynical about youth these days, but every generation is cynical about the youth. It just, in these days, it seems that there's so little engagement. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I really got the pendulum swing, that it would be the youth who are so comfortable with, engaged with digital technology, who would then really seek and see the value in the face-to-face, in the non-digital, even combining the two and using the digital technology to have that human interaction, which is beautiful. Also struck by the circle, basically, in First Nations tradition of the talking stick, having each person speak, be heard with nobody else speaking, with just listening. And the power of that, power of being heard, with so much communication being about speaking and not enough about listening, to actually incorporate that, to really get the power of that. Okay, sorry for that. I just
apology declined.
Okay.
Honor to hear that you're that it's inspiring so much in you.
Do you ever find yourself apologizing for no good reason, but rather as a way of excusing yourself, as if you've said too much or taken up too much time or space? That is a form of self-sabotage, a way to negate the value of your words or even your very presence. We all have ways in which we sabotage ourselves. How are you holding yourself back from creating a life you love in all areas? If you're ready to transform any area of life where you're just not producing the results you want, or you're ready to unleash more of you, I'm ready to help. As a certified freedom from self-sabotage coach, I work with clients in groups and one-on-one to identify the barriers holding you back and help you to true up to what matters most in your life. Life will never be the same, because you can't unsee what you will see about the surprising ways in which the things you do every day are designed to keep you from living your best life. If you'd like to explore what's possible, just email me at michelle@gatheryourwits.com. Now back to our empowering programming. Let's talk about, I know that you've written quite a bit, Lluvius, about technology. What is it that you see the role of technology in what you're doing, but also the importance of it, and maybe just expand on what Tom was just talking about you using technology with our humanity.
I love that question. Technology is a means of decentralizing power. It can also be a means of power being centralized. It's a very double-edged sword, a sharp double-edged sword. Technologies, I'm interfaced with technology on a couple frontiers of my life, particularly my career. I think the primary one being my work with my father over the last 3 years. Being technologically affluent has helped me support his mission to address the medical atrocities of our time and to spread that awareness. That
And I'll just
battle,
briefly just to say, for those who don't know, Dr. Mark Trozzi is your father, and he's actually been on this podcast. So, yeah, great leader in medical freedom.
yeah, my dad, he's since the beginning of this mission, he's been bringing an update to the medical field, but also to the physician-patient relation, and also setting a new precedent, because nobody in Canada has ever stood up to the governing bodies of physicians and surgeons like he has, and like our team has. So technology has helped me interface with a very battle-oriented frontier. I'm hoping that as we see the courts and all this settle, that we get to building the new systems. But it's allowed me to assist a very important mission in enlightening the issues and warning people, and then providing also what solutions are available to us with limited access to scientific resources. We're all locked out of labs, for instance. Another frontier of my life is over to the youth. So technology has helped me to build this organization with my team, with Tom, with our mentors, David and Laura, to connect with youth around the world, to build up towards charitable status, to be looking at further opportunities to actually connect more and more in person. We all have, well, at a certain point in Audi, we did meet in person. I've traveled to the UK. I've spent time with Tom. These over to the use of conduit. It's allowing tomorrow's network to connect today. So what we saw with COVID was really a blitzkrieg by the system, and everyone was disorganized in the beginning, but it's through the stress of all of that networks started to form, and we're, as a movement, we're stronger than ever because of those connections. My vision for Over to the Youth was and still is to have those networks already built, so that there's a vigilance for society going forward, so that this sort of thing can't happen again, because there's going to be a strong organized network of people, 10 years from now, in their 30s, maybe in their 40s, ready, absolutely ready, and already proactive. Technology's also allowed me to express my own ideas through the airwaves, through the internet. I write a Substack, and having that opportunity to share my thoughts, whether it's on technology or whether it's on spirituality or philosophy, I'm able to transmit what I think. And then also I work part-time for a really incredible company called Above Phone. It's abovephone.com, and we supply people with phones that are actually geared towards decentralization, sovereignty, freedom, and privacy. You can't have freedom without privacy. And that's another frontier where technology has been very, very helpful for me as an individual to contribute to another team building a new parallel system. So I think technology as a tool it can be used as broadly as the creativity of the human mind. I even use AI like on a daily basis, and I'm really not ashamed of that, because it's another tool which is really accelerating what I can produce in a day. And by helping me as someone that's helping the parallel economy, it's accelerating decentralization through intelligent use.
And you highlight something there as well, which synergizes with how I approach it, which is we can use the technology as a tool for enhancing our human relationships. The problem we've been facing is that it's become a tool to dictate our human relationships. Part of what I see the pendulum swinging back to now is the idea that we have conscious choice over how we use these tools to further those connections. We're in a, as I mentioned earlier, we're in a place where we can use the digital platforms to engage people where they're at now, especially if they've not got those communities in person around them because of so many agendas and things at play that have degraded them over the years, and then use that to return them to a place of empowerment that they can either build those communities in person, or where relevant be able to move to be in those in-person communities. And it's why those in-person gatherings and to have those for our members to look forward to is so important for us, because that's the time where all those skills and all the ideas that we've been introducing through the digital mediums can come together and integrate properly in a way that I believe can only be done in person. So these two ideas for me aren't incompatible. What we can do digitally and what we can do in person. They can work together in serve the technology, the digital, in service of the physical. And I believe we are moving towards that, and we're modeling a lot of that with over to the youth. Lluvius, you wanted to jump back in?
I'd love to add on to that. It brought this up for me, and it's really short. This use of technology is another expression of slave consciousness versus freedom consciousness. The computer can either use me or I can use the computer. And there's plenty of avenues of addictive cycles to suck me under, so that my attention is harvested by corporations which engineer these things to harvest my attention. Or I can use my attention and direct it through this medium to exert my creativity into the world that I'm in, and to actually be working from a place of manifestation rather than reaction. I really think that this is what it comes down to, and it's expressed through technology, but it's far broader, and we can apply the same concept to this and other things.
So I want to ask you about, how do you prevent yourself from addictive behavior with technology? Because I see it in myself, and there are different things that I do to make sure I'm utilizing the technology for good and not being used by it. So what is it that you guys do?
I came from the cave on this one. I grew up in digital addiction, and I know it inside and out. I'd say my cyber addiction began when I was 8 years old, and I recognized it when I was 17, and I've been in the healing process since then. I'd say I've been in near full control of it for about 10 months.
So what is it that had you recognize it, and then how did you come to control it?
Well, it's like anything. You don't know what you don't know, right? So the stigma around addiction is, substance addiction. And so alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, coffee, these fast food, these are more obvious because they have an immediate physical consequence that is very directly relatable. The physical, mental decline of an individual when abusing digitally induced dopamine isn't as obvious. We just think, oh, that person's a little skinny or a little out of shape or a little introverted or hard to talk to, But digital stimulation of dopamine, it shares, all the commonalities with our traditional understanding of addiction. There's, physical detriment, from lack of sunlight to lack of exercise to neglecting to eat. Like for me, you wouldn't recognize me 6 years ago. I was paper white. I was anemic. I wouldn't sleep very much. So like the physical consequence of this had taken its toll on me as a teenager. What gave me that initial insight, like, again, I believe God's in all things. I believe that God plays a part in all of our lives, and I believe that we're in God's imagination. So I do accredit my being saved from it to that source energy and that divine love. But the observable the observable event was, I was in the cave. I was on YouTube doing my distraction for my feelings and the reality I was living in, to go through YouTube videos, and I came across one which was this guy who was talking about his League of Legends addiction, and he was a few years older than me. He was in college. I was just finished my GCSEs as I studied in England, and he did an advice give on me, or the other. It might have been 10,000 or so people that saw this. So by YouTube standards, not that much. But to get to the point, he spoke from his personal experience. He spoke from his heart. He spoke to his struggle. He didn't tell me what to do. He didn't project on me. I don't remember his name. He never met me, but he shared a part of his soul. And when he spoke, in that strong, empowered I statement, this is what I'm going through. This is how I've coped with it. This is how I realized it is what it is. I went, whoa, that really resonates, And so whoever that person was, I really accredit it to him and thank him. All those years ago, that was my first lead. And then it was the struggle, the internal struggle between, oh, well, I really like this thing, or I think I do, because I'm addicted to it. The addiction will defend itself, and he's right. And I know it's right. And so it took a while for the belief system to fully take root that, like, I deserve better than this. And then through that, it's like, oh, wow, there's so many doors to open. Self-limiting belief systems, the reason why that cave, that isolation, that retreat into a cyber reality appealed to me as a youth, having gone through some hard experiences as a boy. And what was it about that escape from a reality that appealed to me? What did it have to offer in the first place? And then the introspection began.
I wrote down, the addiction will defend itself, which is so great, right? That's the subconscious mind looking to keep things the same, right? Looking for that safety in the familiar. That avoiding of emotions, I think, is so key. And I know for myself, I can go down that tunnel, because as I struggle with different challenges in my life, it's so easy to just pick up my phone and let myself get distracted by one more scroll through something, or one more, brain game, because they're good for me, right? So the mind is justifying, and of course I need to stay informed, right? So there's all this justification happening, but really I know what's happening is an avoidance of certain emotions. How do we, and I think that's the case for everyone, virtually everyone, pun. So, how is it that you support people in recognizing that? And then the second part would be, how do you support people in getting that facing that emotion is doable, that they will survive it and actually that it has benefit?
Just walk my talk, like lead by example. That's what leadership is. It's not leading from the back row and telling other people what to do. I had a problem, and I'm living proof that that problem can be overcome. That's it. Everybody's on a different path. Some things may apply, some things may inspire, other things may not. I'm not responsible for anybody else's recovery but mine, but I can be a light in the darkness to say, hey, it is possible. And that's what that young man on YouTube when I was a teenage boy did for me. That's it. Walk the talk in anything.
Are you walking your talk? Are you a light in the darkness? What is the unique perspective and way of being that you bring to the world? And are you fully living it? Coaching isn't about fixing or changing who you are. It's about supporting you in being the version of yourself you want to be. It's about helping you remove any barriers of your already perfect, unique self expression and freeing you to walk your talk and unleash your potential. That's why the best athletes in the world have coaches, not because they don't know what they're doing, but because they're really good at what they do and they want to keep expanding what's possible. If you'd like to explore what's possible for you to unleash whatever may be holding you back from your full self expression, email me at michelle@gatheryourwits.com and let's have an empowering conversation about you. And now back to our empowering conversation. Tom, I'd like to get your thoughts on this, particularly as someone who, speaks openly about your own awakening, your own understanding of, first of all, coming to terms with your emotions about it. You talked about depression and suicidal thoughts. I'd like to just to have you expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So many ways I could expand on it. In terms of the addiction side to it, there's certainly a part of me that always wanted to blame myself, to say it was my fault for things that weren't my fault. That was part of it for me, and not wanting to cause a fuss. And the flip side to that is people please constantly, and that was a denial of my own emotion and my own experience, coming from a place of no self-worth and self-recognition. And it's only through having experiences where I've been held by other peers and mentors who did all the same things that Lluvius alluded to in him coming across the story of someone else overcoming their technology addiction. It's not advice giving. It's not saying you must do this, let's do that. It's not talking down, not negating anyone else's experience of what they've gone through. It's just about saying, here's what happened to me, and here's the journey I went on as a result. I believe we are all receptive to stories more so than facts or figures than anything else. It is stories that change us, because stories are journeys of growth and of change. Facts and figures don't give us reference on how to change. They're little events that happen on that journey. And when I realized that I had the power to write that story for myself, to say, here's what's happening, here is the journey they're going on, and here is where I am going to go to in that journey. And to have mentors and guides on that route who weren't writing the story for me, who were just pointing out the roads that I could travel down if I really wanted to. that was a huge game changer for me. And that only came about because I had the spaces to do that. I had spaces where I could just be listened to and not shaped or molded into some version of what the person I was with wanted me to be. It was a spaces where any need for those agendas or egos or projections from anyone else can be dropped. And I've benefited enormously from it. And that's why I'm here trying to pay it forward with Over to the Youth and give other people the opportunity to access those kind of spaces, because it saved me. It really did save me. And I wouldn't be here having this conversation with you if I didn't have Over to the Youth and those spaces.
There is so much about what the both of you have said that completely mirror the things I've been saying. And I don't want to make this about me, but I'm just like, I feel so.
Go for it. Make it about you. Which gets synergized.
I truly feel so recreated, listening to everything. There's just so many things. I mean, not the least of which you have the exact same quote on your website that I have, which is, "We are the ones we've been waiting for." So there's that. You also talked about building bridges, which is the core of everything I've done, because several years ago, when I was going through an awakening of my own, I had chronic fatigue for 13 years, and 7 of those years I couldn't work. And journaling is what gave me access to downloading. And I was starting to promote journaling courses. And I was working with a coach who had said to me, I was looking at what was next, and he had suggested praying on it. And at the time, I wasn't a prayer. And so I went for a walk in the farmer's field next to my house, and there was a little creek. And I stopped in front of the creek and I said, "Okay, God, what's next?" And the message was bridge building. And when you said that, it was just, it's like a little bit of electricity ran through me. So I'm just so struck at the symbiosis, and I don't think there are any coincidences that you and I, Tom, would end up on a call through the Conscious People's Network, and you would reach out to me, and I remember thinking, he has exactly the kind of energy of somebody that I want to be in conversation with. So thank you for that. I also I'm reminded of one of my very favorite quotes by a woman named Anita Mae Brown, which used to be in my email signature for years, which is, "The reward for conformity is everyone likes you but yourself." And I love that you were able to make that transition to recognize that. What is the source of that transition? How did you make it? Why could you see? And this is for both of you. What is it that you think, had you recognized the things you've come to recognize, where so many people are not there? So many people are still very much in that slave system, in that slave mentality.
There's never going to be a time where everybody's going to be happy. There's going to be hard decisions, and there's going to be disappointed people. And big part of my work, always being a boy that just wanted everyone to get along. It's my recent history. Just 10, 13 years ago, I was the little boy that wanted everyone to just get along. And even during the journey of Over to the Youth, there's been many experiences where it's like, sorry, Lluvius, you've got to choose. You got to stand up and make a choice. And there's going to be hard decisions, and there's going to be disappointed people. But the times in my life where I've try to be keeping everybody happy, the person that I disappointed the most was myself. I betray myself to give other people what they wanted, and they'd be disappointed anyway because it's an unrealistic expectation. My decision to leave my mother's household at 17 and fly across the ocean to be with my dad and be reunited after 10 years. There was hard decisions and there was disappointed people. My dad and I's decision to do something about COVID when it came up, there was hard decisions. We sold the house. There was disappointed people. We lost friends. The whole medical institution went after him. Still the right thing to do. And yeah, all along the way, there's been that, and I'm finally coming to terms with it. I will do what I've come here to do, and I'll do my best at every turn of the way. But some people aren't going to agree with what I do, and that's okay. That's okay. I'm not the vehicle of everybody's dream. I'm the vehicle of mine.
What is the quality of life that gives you?
It's like it's like weight training. It's hard at first, and it never gets easier, really. It never gets easier, but the capacity increases. It's just the difficulty increases too. There's a variable difficulty rate on it. I do believe that God, whichever word anybody uses to identify that divine energy of love that unites us all and gives us all common ideas to manifest into the world at the same time. Got thinking about God. I forgot what I was even saying. It doesn't even seem important now.
I'll tell you, the purpose of this podcast, where it came to me, I was actually, I've told the story before, but I was marching into Ottawa with James Topp. And I had the opportunity to speak with him briefly. And then I was marching for a little while with Danny Bulford. And it struck me that these two men who were so courageous in standing up for what they knew to be right were both quite introverted. And that they were not people who wanted to step up into into the limelight, but they did so anyway. And I thought, what is that quality that has us step over the discomfort, the fear of being disagreed with, of being disharmonious, of being disliked, and has us stand up and true ourselves up to our values? And because I know it's different for everyone, but this is the inquiry, because I believe, and this is why I started the podcast, that if people could see the human struggle that we all go through in order to have that they would see something in themselves that would have them find the courage to do so. And I believe there is a quality of life it gives us that when we step over that, and I know from my own experience, it is hard and sometimes painful. And sometimes I just want to go live in a cabin in the woods, and write anonymously. But there's something so alive about living inside of purpose, a bigger purpose.
I think you answered the question. Your experience by the creek, you were inspired by a higher power that helped to remind you why you came here. I believe that is the energy which gives somebody, it's the energy which qualifies the called, and it's the energy which gives us the tools we need to go forward. I think that it's all there for us. But I do believe that trusting in God is the key. At the end of the day, I think that that's what binds us all together. I know it's what inspired me to start this organization, and what's held my feet to the fire every time I wanted to quit. Like plenty of times. Tom can speak to that. The amount of times I nearly checked out. I'm not meant to check out yet.
What about for you, Tom? What is the quality of life it gives you to step into this role?
Sitting here now, I feel so much weight lifted on me compared to where I have been. I grew up in childhood and teenage years always feeling like a burden, like I was holding other people down, and developing coping strategies of trying to be the best people pleaser possible and staying out the way otherwise to try and manifest that. And it constantly crushed me, and still battling with that going into university and then going into COVID and all the lockdowns there. I was beginning to build up ideas within me and dip my toes into that world of, hang on, I'm picking up insights and I am attuned to things that would help other people, and that no one else around me seems to be tuning into those either, but still struggling with that feeling of being a burden onto others, and having a people pleaser take over and ruin things constantly caused strife, and is what allowed for the spiral of depression and suicidal ideation, and to the point that I did try to take my own life, because I built up all these I had this innate understanding in me that I was seeing things about what was happening in the world that others would benefit from seeing, and finding myself unable to share those with people for risking upsetting their world and disappointing people. And I tried to take my own life because of it, and I failed. And in the fallout of me coming to terms with that failure, I remember having a vision of myself it was in a deep meditation. I had a vision of myself in a desert with huge giants around me, barren landscapes as far as the eye could see. And I was walking along this road, and one by one, past versions of myself were coming out of my spirit, my consciousness, and just waiting by the side of the road as I went on. And this continued a series of times, past versions of me who've been through traumatic events over and over again. I kept walking along this road until all those versions had left, and it was just me, pure as I was meant to be, walking along this road. And far in the distance, I saw another figure standing there, and I got closer, and innately I knew it was meant to be a representation of Christ. He had sort of the stereotypical robes in many ways that he's depicted, but I couldn't make out his face at all. I found that very interesting, that I was deliberately being told in that circumstance, I'm not meant to focus there on the details. I'm meant to feel from the heart what is innately true. And I looked at this figure and I asked, what am I meant to do? And the response I got was, you know exactly what you need to do. And he gave his hand to me. I shook it. He turned away and walked off. And and at that point I turned around and I began walking back, slowly returning to these past versions of myself, and now integrating them with a newfound sense of love that they'd gotten me this far, and knowing that they can live within me and they don't have to keep alive to try and please other people, to try and get a sense of love that these past versions of me never had in all the previous moments of my life that I'd experienced. And so I brought them all back into me with a sense of love and compassion, and for the first time in my life, not feeling like a burden for all for those past versions of myself. And I did that to the start of the road and came out of the meditation, and for the first time ever, it was clear to me that I don't have to take everyone on the same journey with me. They have their own journeys that they are going to go down. I do not have to feel I have to drag them along and appease them at every step of the way to be down begging, saying, please come along, I'll do anything for you to join me. If I am on a path of authenticity, integrity, and love, the right people who need to join me on that journey will come and join me when they need to. And if they need to leave at any point and go on a different journey, they go and do that. And for the first time, I had an understanding that that's how this game of life works, and so much lifted from me that point. The depression and those suicidal ideation lifted through a recognition of that understanding that I could trust myself and that I wasn't a burden, and that through my processes of discovery that I do find things that I can share through story for those who need to hear it. And I don't always know the people who need to hear it, but I know I have a trust that they will find me. And I just do what I can to tell the best stories that I can. And so that's the quality of life that it's given me. It's just a literal sense of enlightenment. I feel lighter than I was before. And it's made a huge difference.
Ooh. I just want to let that sit. Authenticity, integrity, love, trust. Those I almost want to end things there because it's so beautiful, but I just want to touch on a few more things. But you didn't just talk about it. You actually recreated those things. Like, I am present to those things. I'm experiencing those things as you say them, which is how I know how authentic it is. So thank you for that. I'm struck by your proficiency isn't the right word, but the fact that you're both swimming in the waters of spirituality and technology, which is itself building a bridge, and I think a much needed one. I have often said that, we talk about a spiritual war, which is a bit of an oxymoron, but we use material world tactics. And what I hear is that you're actually focused on spiritual mechanisms, spiritual pathways. Anything you want to say about that? This, again, it's a statement, not a question.
I can try. Tom is a hard act to follow, and what Tom has just shared in the space with both of us and with your audience is a gift that Tom brings to our community every single week. And it's that vulnerable leadership, leading with vulnerability. It actually creates a deeper space, a deeper interpersonal space, which gives others in the community permission to let their guard down and be seen and be heard, which is a human need, to be truly seen, heard, accepted, and loved. And it's that vulnerability, which is so hard to do, but also when it's done like how Tom embodies it, it really changes the world. And I do foresee a future with this more exemplified throughout society, throughout relations, throughout families. So I just wanted to say that. Yeah, I'm reaching that point. I'm a little bit empty-headed, so I forgot what else I was going to say, but I do want to.
Empty-headed is so good. It's so good. We need more empty-headed people who can actually take in something new. I think people's heads are far too full these days.
I did just recall what it was, the spiritual war. Yeah, what does a spiritual war look like? Because we've had plenty of people kill each other over religion over the last countless human history. We go back to Muslims and Christians and Crusades, and I forget what the reverse was, but there was plenty of Muslim invasions of Christian countries too. Everybody slaughtered each other on the idea of spirituality. I'm going to speak to something which I am not yet personally capable of, but I do believe it is one of the highest principles of Christ, which is love thy enemy. And I hear people speak to this, and I'll admit, oftentimes I'm like, well, that's fantastic, but I'd like to see these people hung, which isn't in synergy with this concept. So I want to own that breach of integrity there within me. But is it possible to hold the likes of Bill Gates or Klaus Schwab or Justin Trudeau in a place of acceptance? For some people, yes. What's required for them to cease their conquest of crime? I don't know. Do we have to, like an ideology, destroy them? Like the pro-life versus pro-choice debate? Do we need to destroy their position and throw them in jail? Or do we pray for them to have like an awakening to their sin and to repent and to change their ways and to step down and walk away? I think from my understanding of what my religion teaches, it would be the latter option. But there's a big part of me that just wants revenge at this point because there's a lot of pain.
I think for me, Martin Luther King Jr. Addresses that when he speaks and wrote about loving thy enemy doesn't mean liking them. Because we can pray for those people, which ultimately, at the very least, benefits us, because then we're still true to that spirit of love. We are still expanding the energy of love, and we are not expanding the energy of hate. And inside of that, I believe we can still serve justice. And I think that it is not out of integrity for you to have those thoughts. I think it is completely in integrity to recognize the pull of both of those thoughts and feelings. And I think sometimes the best we can do is to recognize the discrepancy between those two things.
Something I struggle with is being a drop in the ocean. I have what influence I have in my life, and I'm grateful for it. But I'm not the all-powerful one that can exert my will on the world and just put it all right, you know? I think that's what the people that I view as global tyrants, I believe that that's the mentality they're in, is that they, by taking a godlike position, they can control the world to such an extent that they can make all the problems go away. But it's a very Luciferian mentality to want to be God. And I recognize that even within me. It's like, oh, wow, if I had the power of God, I know what I would do today. But there's a reason I don't. and there's a good reason I don't. But what I would love to see is an awakening of the people in the most dark places, for a light to be shone there some way, somehow. the Bible states, like with man, some things are impossible, but with God, anything's possible. And I think when we speak of a spiritual war, I get hung up on the vocabulary of it, but I mean, let's be warriors of prayer, whatever that means to you. Like I don't need anybody to believe the bridge that I've found God through. I think that's another point of division, as I spoke to earlier. But let's elevate this planet together, cross over the lines, love each other, and do better than we have. I think that's why we're here.
There's I see a flip side to that drop in the ocean analogy as well. Thinking about the works of people like Vader Austin, that of water having a memory and a consciousness, and that in so many ways we can show this. Yes, we might just be one drop in the ocean, but that drop in the ocean can confer its memory and its frequency to other water particles around it. So yes, we are drops in the ocean. And how we show up in the world has an impact on the drops around us. It's both. And many of those qualities and ideas of how you want to show into the world that you went through there, Lluvius, we bring those into the oceans that we find ourselves in and embody it, and it will be felt by the people around us. And that does make change.
I hear in what both of you are saying, and also in a lot of the conversation we've had today, is a shift from dualistic thinking into a much more holistic thinking. It's not either or. Nothing is either or. And the moment we can step out of that either or conversation, new possibilities arise, new ways of looking at things arise. I want to give you an opportunity to say anything you want to say, anything you want to talk about. Yeah, go ahead.
Go for it, Tom.
It's such a way of saying, I don't know, hand it over to you. It's the either or mentality. That is the division. That is where it comes from. To be so steadfast in one way for whatever reason that nothing else is acceptable. What I find is that times change, places change, people change, circumstances, they do change. That doesn't mean we throw absolutely everything out in one go and say, okay, now everything has to be completely different. We discover what is right for those times through that dialogue, through that conversation, through a reminder that we are all human and that there's beauty in us being human and being able to come together as humans. And in this conversation, my mind always goes to the Bruce Lee quote, take what is needed, discard what is not. And I think
your own.
I think about it a lot when this conversation comes up, and I think it's apt in terms of what that means for over to the youth. We are here to hold youth where they are on their journey, because I realized that I've been at so many different points on that journey, and to have someone just to be able to hold me there and to know that there's a reason why I'm on that journey, and that someone acknowledges and understands that I'm in that nexus. It would have been wonderful for me to have that, and I feel honored to be able to contribute to providing that to so many other people. And that, to me, is what ends the arbitrary divides and the either ors that have been so rampant for so long. That's where healing happens. And that's, to me, what Over to the Youth is about. Does that give you enough time, Lluvius?
Well done.
Oh yeah, you're good. You're a good tag team. So I'm not, before I say what I was going to say, you go.
Oh, I got the talking stick.
You have the talking stick.
These are my last words.
Well, you know, if you have something else at the end, I'm not going to cut you off.
Oh, wow. I'm flattered. Yeah. Well, I don't have much else to say. Tom, I am aware that we're running an open gathering coming up soon. Is that right?
Not today.
Not today, but
we do have one coming up on
what
the
is it you want to
33rd.
promote?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Michelle, I'd like to invite you to our next open gathering. There'll be youth there. There'll be other members of our community, and it's not a recorded space. It's a very private space. There's no recording of the session. It's a place to come and be held, and be honored if you'd come and join us and experience Over to the Youth with us.
I would absolutely be honored to be there. Thank you. I accept. I want people to go check out what you're doing. I will be posting your website, and when this airs, any updates on Over to the Youth, on the two of you. I want to thank you for this incredibly moving conversation. I truly feel energized from our conversation. I think you are both extraordinary human beings. I am grateful that you reached out, Tom, and thank you both so much for who you're being and what you're doing in the world.
Thank you for inviting us to this and hosting this space. I assure you, I'm walking away with new gems and expansions to my own perspective. So thanks for the gifts that you've shared with us in this water wheel relation.
And I'm going to absolutely mirror that as well. I am absolutely mirroring it. Thank you. It's been wonderful.
Thank you. Okay. It's customary for every generation to complain about the one following them, kids today, but we can no longer afford to complacently criticize. As Lluvius Trozzi himself said, the standard of the future will be determined by the quality of our youth today. Fortunately, if he and Tom Shaw are any indication, there is every possibility that their generation can surpass the accomplishments of even the greatest generation. Their work, and more importantly, who they're being, can lead the way in birthing a new way forward, a way beyond left or right, pro or anti, and even woke or awake. Of the many empowering lessons I could name from this delicious conversation, I'll start with this key takeaway. There is a third way in which to be in the world, beyond the paradigm of sides, beyond the perpetually divisive us versus them mentality pervasive in every area of society. Rather than emphasizing our differences, we can look upstream and find our commonalities. As Tom Shaw so beautifully displayed, we're each on a unique journey that has shaped and informed us. By shifting our focus from ideas to experiences, we can find our shared humanity and create newly together. We can both have our opinions and hold the space for others with different views. If we are to survive the existential threat of our increasing righteousness and resulting division, we will need this skill, this foundation of compassion, this access to love. We will need to elevate ourselves and build bridges together. My second takeaway is that we can no longer separate our values from our day-to-day lives. The alignment of our values with our actions gives us the quality of our lives, and that gives us the quality of the world. It is not enough to be loving at home, but hate people out in the world. We can't use authoritarianism to fight authoritarianism. Fear cannot lead to freedom. The means are always contained in the end. If we are to truly create newly, it will be inside a new paradigm, one that starts within. A third, but most certainly not final takeaway, is the power of being one drop of water in the ocean of humanity. As Tom said, each of us can imprint our memory into the pool in which we swim. We can, as Lluvius suggests, elevate this planet together. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation and will join me for more. If you'd like, share your insights in the comments section, and please hit the subscribe button. Stay tuned, be true to yourself, and remember that we are the ones we've been waiting for.